Before we get started, I want to go ahead and ask you guys a question. And this is a judgment-free zone, though you guys can go ahead and talk amongst yourselves about it in the comments, and we'll see what other people's points are. But I am very curious to what do you prefer? Action-based combat or turn-based combat when it comes to your RPGs? In my personal opinion, I do think that this debate goes deeper than just the actual combat, because more often than not, action-based combat games themselves are structured and designed like outside of combat very differently, because a lot of times they'll have to design these level layouts or worlds themselves around us not being transitioned to something else, like they do in turn-based games more often than not. Like you won't really find too many action-based games in very narrow corridors, because how are you really going to have areas to move around and do stuff when you're just in a really tight corridor? Like, say, imagine Persona 5, for example. I can't really imagine Persona 5's level design working for an action game. That's why they took a lot more broad of an approach when they made Persona 5 Strikers, which is a more action-based Persona concept. So let me know what you all think. I'd really love to know why too, so that I think we can get some really good discussion going, just like the last video. But if you're interested in more videos like this regarding Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and other RPGs, subscribing to the channel and make sure you never miss a video like this one again. So I want to go into action versus turn-based combat now in the core of the debate. I'm not really here to take a side. I really just want to know and talk about what each game offers and why they're not as different as a lot of people may think they are. Now, I don't think too many people would be pissed off at me saying that the historical root of RPGs are turn-based. I mean, love it or hate it, that's exactly what it is. And in a way, I don't think they're as different as a lot of people tend to think they are. I think in a way they actually offer the same emotional and mechanical responses from the player. Things like satisfaction and accomplishment and strategy, preparation and determination to actually proceed with the fight. I think action and turn-based games both actually do this in spades, and the emotional responses we get from persevering and what we get out of these confrontations are really similar to one another, in my opinion. So say let's start with turn-based games, for example. That was the root of it all, like I said before. Now, the mechanical responses for turn-based games, strategy is a big part of the game. It's a long-term thing that goes the entire duration of a fight. More often than not, maybe a modern turn-based game, because some of these turn-based games have been getting kind of easy these days, where strategy isn't as important, but the strategical nature of turn-based combat is what it is to its core. A lot of these games, you need to find out and assess enemy weaknesses. You need to prepare for a fight. You need to strategize your team compositions and things like that. You need to have a balanced team, like saying who's going to be the healer, what will this healer have, etc. What's this monk going to have, what is this mage going to have, what is this warrior going to have, and how will they execute it, or say what will this tank have? Will he be an evasive tank, or will he be a more of a sponge tank? It all just kind of depends, and there's a lot of strategical nature when it comes to doing this stuff even before the fight. While in the same vein, you kind of have to do this in an action game too, just in a different way. Like in an action game, you have to make sure you have the right weapon equipped, make sure you're exploring the environments, and ensure that you do in fact have the best weapon equipped for the situation. Make sure it's upgraded depending on the game that might offer that kind of thing. You need to strategize what kind of play style are you going to be really going for. Are you going for a magic build? Are you going for a melee build? Are you going to go for a status effect build? All these different things are basically the same kind of concept from turn-based games. It's just inverted in a way. It's the opposite side of it, like a coin, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't really pay attention to, because they're too focused on the surface level aspect of what makes these things different, because that's the core of this debate, isn't it? It's just that there's so much similarities between these two two, but because on the surface they're so different, that's what a lot of people kind of can't get past. A lot of people are writing off Final Fantasy 16, and honestly even before Final Fantasy 16, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, Final Fantasy 15, they're writing off a lot of these games because they've kind of abandoned turn-based combat. But in my opinion, Final Fantasy has done that for a while now. 7 Remake, 16, 13 is turn-based still though, so I'll give them that, regardless of what it may seem like. Even though it is pretty action-oriented, the way you actually input commands still technically makes it turn-based. So, but we'll get into that in a Final Fantasy 13 video. But honestly, it feels like the last real turn-based game we had, to a lot of people at least, was Final Fantasy X, or I guess you could say 10-2. But let's get back to the real meat of the video again. Preparation outside of combat, I did bring it up for action-based combat, but it does the exact same thing for turn-based combat as well. I need to make sure that I have my party composition aligned right, like say Final Fantasy IV, for example. In Final Fantasy IV, you have different rows you can place your characters in, and the rows is really important. Mages are really squishy. They may be able to deal devastating damage with their magic, but if they're up close in the front row, then they're going to get absolutely decimated by whatever enemies are right in front of you. So it's good to have mages and prepare for this kind of thing by putting your mages in the back, so that way they'll be safe while they begin to cast their abilities and things like that. That's something you need to really prepare for. Final Fantasy VII, you need to make sure that you're actually preparing the type of material you want to use. Final Fantasy VI, you need to make sure your magicite and your equipment is all right. I want to be able to search my environment and be able to have the right equipment that'll let me be able to, like the Genji glove, I'll be able to just go ahead and attack multiple times. That completely breaks the game, man. Well, I want to be able to dual cast. So yeah, I'll put this ability, I'll put this equipment on Terra, and then now she can dual cast with her already super powerful magic. Things like that are the strategy, and it also goes into the preparation. I'm preparing for whatever potential encounters I have by preparing a strategy. And again, I already said the same thing that goes for an action-based game. Of course, I also brought up the determination to do the fight. I do think in some way that I think it takes more determination to get through a turn-based battle than it does an action-based battle, just because more often than not, because you're not really quote-unquote in the moment in a turn-based game, you never know what the enemy is actually going to do. You're right there in the moment in an action game. I'm standing in front of him, I can freely move, the enemy can't touch me as long as I dodge it. The enemy can't touch me or hurt me as long as I'm blocking. I feel like I have more control over what happens to me in an action-based game, while in turn-based games I have to prepare for not being in control. And I think that is kind of in a way another strategical nature of things, but I think it still provides the same emotional response. Getting through that enemy's turn is such a gratifying feeling, because in the end I didn't know what they were going to use, but I made sure that I casted reflect magic on my party. I made sure that everybody was healed up ahead of time. I made sure my one of my teammates casted a debuff art, so whatever they're going to hit me with is not going to hit as hard as it could have. That's the kind of satisfaction and accomplishment you get in the long term, because it's constantly happening every turn. The moment you're feeling that satisfaction and knowing that the strategy works, you immediately queue it up again. That way you can get that same response immediately afterwards. In action-based game, it's more of the short burst kind of responses. It's all about the little victories in action-based games. I need to make sure and watch the enemy pattern, and then as soon as I see an opening, I can go exploit that weakness that he just allowed me to do, and I immediately start my combo, and that it only lasts for a second, because once you kind of get your combo going, it kind of just dies there. But in the end, it still feels amazing, because you just start racking up the little victories. When he has an opening, when I can use this magic, when I can completely stop him from doing his combos to me, it adds up so much to where, yeah, it may not be a giant golden trophy by the end, but in the end, I am surrounded in a sea of small trophies. And I think that's why in the end, they're both gold weighing the same amount. I guess. You know, we're really comparing something that doesn't really matter in the end. In the end, I feel like both gameplay methods really give me the same thing, just in different departments and different angles. You know, again, I'm racking up my little victories in an action game, but for turn-based, I have one big, glorious, you know, retribution by the end of it all, you know, and that's what really kind of sets them apart. The same thing that sets them apart is what makes them so similar to one another. So I honestly don't really see why a lot of people are fighting about it. I don't think Final Fantasy transitioning from turn-based to action-based is a bad thing. Do I think we'll ever have another modern mainline turn-based game? I absolutely do think so. I do think so. But I get why Square Enix is more dabbling into action-based games this time for Final Fantasy. There just are more turn-based games than there are action games. And Square Enix, and at least when it comes to Final Fantasy, they're less experienced in this department. So they want to explore their creativity when it comes to Final Fantasy and action-based combat. And I think that should be more than okay to do with. Like I kind of said in the last video, especially in the comments, I think Final Fantasy is a feeling we get when we're within these worlds, amongst these people. And I think as long as that's intact, it doesn't really matter the gameplay method, in my opinion. As long as I can get absorbed in this world and truly get that feeling that this is Final Fantasy, I think I'll be okay with whatever direction Final Fantasy ends up taking. Action, turn-based, it doesn't really matter. While I do kind of align myself with more of turn-based games in these days, I'd honestly say it's kind of been like that since the beginning, because I grew up playing a lot of Pokemon. I didn't grow up with Final Fantasy, but it is a series that I practically surround myself around every day now for years now. So I really do love Final Fantasy. So yeah, I might love turn-based games a bit more, but that doesn't mean I don't love action-based games. A lot of people who are subscribed to this channel may have found me through Kingdom Hearts, which is an action-based series. So it all just depends for me. As long as I have fun and feel like I get to strategize, I get to prepare, and it requires my determination, I get that satisfaction, you know, that adrenaline going. That's all I really care about. This video is going on long enough, I'm sorry, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to be able to discuss more Final Fantasy, more Kingdom Hearts, and more RPG topics with you all. Again, if you haven't already, like the video. It lets me know you guys want more videos like this one. But thank you all so much for watching. My name is KingdomAce, and remember everyone to play some games, have some fun, and enjoy your day today.